in Leavenworth, Kansas, in front of the Justice Center for a CoreCivic rally ahead of a hearing to determine the contract that the city here is going to have with CoreCivic. CoreCivic is a corporation that handles and manages correction facilities, and most recently it's been announced that the one in Leavenworth here that will be opening is actually just received a contract to house ICE arrestees from the recent sweeps. So right now there's speakers starting, so we're going to go over there and give you guys the speakers and then probably get some information ahead of this hearing.
Exactly one thing, CoreCivic is awful, doesn't belong in our town, and needs to go. We've got about an hour and about 8 people with a lot to say, so I'm going to be very quick. We're starting with Esme Sung, ACLU Communications Director, who would like to talk about... Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Nice microphone. Yeah, my name's Esme Sung. I'm the Communications Director at the ACLU of Kansas. Thank you all for being here. In 1999, author and philosopher Bell Hooks wrote, "The worship of money leads to a hardening of the heart, and it can lead any one of us to condone, actively or passively, the exploitation and dehumanization of others or ourselves." So when confronted with past harms, stories of harms past and present, CoreCivic sort of responds in numerical phrases and money worship again and again. And I believe that their PR team genuinely does not have the language to understand that when we say we're worried about the dehumanization of people inside the facility, when we say that we're worried about the exploitation of workers, when we talk about life and death circumstances for everyone inside, the answer to those questions is not found in dollar amounts. And when we bring up concerns about life and death, CoreCivic tells us the facility will enrich the economy. But where was that enrichment for the last 30-some years until 2021 when this facility was open? So instead, through their own actions, the last 34 years and especially the last 6 months, CoreCivic has left this community not enriched, but divided and confused. They expect us all to have amnesia about their track record here, and then they muddy the waters with big financial promises. They pressure this community to make the same moral compromises that this company is so comfortable with. The worship of money leads to a hardening of the heart. CoreCivic's executives expect us to worship money the way that their company has since they were Corrections Corporations of America, until they rebranded to cover up some of their sins. It goes all the way back to their first projects in 1984 when they turned an old motel into an immigration detention center for ICE. So ICE and CoreCivic have been besties for a long time. The private prison system that CoreCivic leeches off of has long been a Venn diagram with immigration detention and enforcement in this country. In their press responses and legal filings, in the very nature of CoreCivic's way of doing business, they show that their decision makers do not understand repair. They do not understand accountability, which is why they won't just get a permit. CoreCivic's team does not understand humanity. They don't understand anything that isn't in terms of profit and overhead. But we understand, and that's why we're here today. The worship of money leads to a hardening of the heart. So you all showed up here today because you know the track record. You read or heard about the 2017 report finding understaffing, mismanagement, the medical negligence, police not being able to investigate crimes inside. You've heard of the homicides, the assaults. I can't even name everything here. But I will tell you that in court last time, the CoreCivic attorney told the court that past conduct cannot be used to judge future conduct. But what other philosophy is more fundamental to the prison system that this company profits off of every day? So we know that this isn't just about CoreCivic, and it's not just about the past. CoreCivic is doing business in Tennessee, in Mississippi, in Arizona. They're doing business in 40-some jails and prisons across this country. CoreCivic has also had multiple calls now, earnings calls, where they cannot even contain their glee about profiting off of this administration and ICE raids and the terrorism of immigrant friends and neighbors. And last month, CoreCivic CEO Damon Hinninger, who by the way went to K-State and Pat College, so he is in Kansas. Damon Hinninger rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange in celebration of their windfall. So I personally was not invited to the party at the New York Stock Exchange. I don't think anyone here was either. I don't think anyone in Leavenworth was. I don't think any of the officers here that are to speak. Marcia, hi, it's good to see you. I don't think Haru or Tina, the detainees you'll hear from today, or the sisters. I don't think any of us were invited. But what we have been invited to are conversations and meetings in this community every week, every month of this year. I get constant messages, DMs, emails, phone calls, and all of them say that we're all very concerned and very worried. And it's okay to say that we're a little scared. It's okay to say that we don't know what CoreCivic's team might do next because of their worship of money. But we can be here in that uncertainty together, right now, in the future, and we know that we will not be silent. A prison built for any of us can be used for all of us. The worship of money. Thank you all for being here, and for being here for each other, telling CoreCivic that we will not fall in line with the worship of money. We will not allow the dehumanization. We will not tolerate the exploitation of ourselves or of anyone, and our hearts will not be hardened. Thank you.
Thank you, Esme, for the quick reminder that while a human is worth about $90 a day to CoreCivic, that's not an accurate representation of what any person is worth. Next, we've got Amy Bateman here to talk about CoreCivic's lawlessness and the rule of law in general.
Thank you. Esme's a hard act to follow, so just to continue with her narrative, the same reason I'm here today is also to invite you to a conversation, because I think the conversation isn't focused for real, true, long-term solution to this problem. Because as the sign that catches my eye in the back there is no permit, no prison. That's what's going on here today, right? So if they had a permit, the prison would be open, unfortunately. So the real issue is that private prisons are legal in America. So should they be? So before I go into that, though, I do want to mention, I'm an attorney here in Leavenworth. I practice law here. I love practicing law in the town that I live in to serve the people that I live amongst and protect the institutions that affect me and my family. And one of the reasons I love practicing here too is I've been impressed with the professionalism, the preparedness, the judicial temperament, and the legal competencies of the judges in this district. And they deserve our utmost respect. So it excites me as an attorney who normally practices in empty courtrooms that people are interested. So this is beautiful. This is wonderful that you all have found the county courthouse. You now know where it is. You know how to participate in our government. But what I really want to ask of you, unfortunately, all the signs are going to have to stay outside. They're beautiful, and they have their place here in the public square. This is where we should be very aggressively and, with all of our loudest voice, be making those points out here in the public square, in the legislative bodies. If you choose to go into that courtroom today, please treat it with the solemnity, dignity, and respect that any of us would want if we were the litigants in that courtroom. It's an adversarial process, which means if you're here to support one side, you're not going to agree with anything the other side says at all. But take it as an opportunity. If you go in there, take it as an opportunity to learn what the other side, because I was also a soldier for 21 years, and the best way to defeat the enemy is to get in their head and know what they think. So if you don't understand the other side, if you don't understand their positions and their legal arguments, you're never going to be able to work around those and get a solution to this problem. So I do hope you go in the courtroom. Again, if there's anything that the judge is going to be really strict today. I know him very well. I respect him, and any side I roll harumph from the crowd might get a contempt today. So please fill up that courtroom to show the force, though, and to show what people are here for and what matters to them in their community. So what I want to talk about is the greater debate is, should our government be outsourcing the deprivation of life, liberty, and property to those detained or confined in our country? There is a legal argument to be made here, and I don't know why it hasn't been made, and so I want to start that conversation, and we're going to, keep it rolling hopefully after today. My position is no, prisons shouldn't be private in America. That comes from, both a philosophical and moral precept and stance, but the law says it shouldn't. And in my experience in the government, I was in the government for 25 years, starting when I was a cadet at West Point in the late 90s. Our nation was going through a huge shift of privatization. We were getting paid through that peace dividend. Clinton balanced the budget. He did that by getting rid of most of the military. So we privatized a lot of things in America. So in 1998, a law was passed called the FAIR Act. It's the Federal Activities Inventory Reform Act of 1998. And in that law, it is clear as day the answer to the question that we're all asking here. It sets out what are inherently governmental functions and what are things that cannot be contracted out to private people, private organizations, that cannot be levered for profit. And what it says in that statute is that inherently governmental functions involves, among other things, the interpretation and execution of the laws of the United States. So we're already pretty much there. So as to, and it lays out some very specific categories, one of them including to significantly affect the life, liberty, or property of private persons. Not just citizens, all private persons. So the fact that, now why doesn't that, obviously anybody who's worked in and around government or been affected by the government knows that it doesn't stop with the statutes. Anyone that has to go register their car, there's laws, there's regulations, there's policies and procedures. And so unfortunately, as this law had developed, the OMB, the documents in the ethics regulations, the acquisition regulations, and the Office of Management and Budget say that private prisons and detention centers are not inherently governmental functions. That is on extremely suspect and shaky ground based on the law that is based on. So I wanted to introduce this topic to this crowd today because if there's anybody that will carry this fight, and this fight, it needs to go out that way, right? So this has to go to Topeka and it has to go to DC. That's the only way it's ever going to change. And it almost did back in 2016. The Department of Justice was looking at the propriety of this and if private prisons should even be a thing. Should the Department of Justice spend any money outsourcing what they do? You would be shocked and dismayed if you walked in and some guy in khakis replaced the sheriff's department tomorrow. And if those were the people that were entrusted with keeping this building safe, to keeping our children, our community safe, these are inherently governmental functions because and just as a last kind of couple points, well, why does it matter? As a soldier, I was paid to do a job. The private contractors from Blackwater that were with me in Afghanistan were also paid to do a job. What's the difference? We're all beholden to that paycheck, right? Well, but not quite. Because if you look at the lack of accountability to the public, private companies, as Esme pointed out brilliantly, right, they're to the shareholders and to the profit line. I had no shareholder, I had no beholden except for the oath that I took to support and defend the Constitution as somebody who works for the government. So there's the accountability to the public in that regard. The conflict of interest. CoreCivic spends millions of dollars lobbying to expand ICE detention. I mean, so there could be a reason to do that. There's a public safety reason, but theirs is a profit reason. It has nothing to do with public safety. The lack of transparency. The FOIA. Most of us know about FOIA or CORA, the ways that we can get government records as citizens. Those don't apply to private companies. So if I do a Freedom of Information Act against the prison here, I'm going to get everything I asked for. If I do it against CoreCivic, almost all of it's going to be covered, shrouded in their proprietary information. And it just is, it undermines our democratic norms, particularly, again, when these people are lobbying for an increase in the activities that will make them more profit that should be inherently governmental functions. So that's my message to you today. I encourage you to continue the conversation. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your interest in this very important topic. Thanks.
I just want to take a moment to note, Amy was absolutely correct to point out that CoreCivic is serving in a core governmental function here. And she asked, how did this happen? The answer is that CoreCivic's founder, Terrell Don Hutto, was the head of American Correctional Association, the Libyan prison lobby group. And back in the 60s, he did the idea in America from whole cloth because he lost a Supreme Court case to an inmate and decided that the ACLU was like getting too much in his business of how he was running his prisons. So that's how we got there, talking about CoreCivic's history of lobbying. But now we're going to move directly on to Sister Jean Ann with the Sisters of Charity Leavenworth. Come on.
Good morning, everybody. That is so informative, Amy, you know, that whole thing about private prisons and the accountability. And so today we are here because this community faces a critical moment in this time. A choice of who we are, what we value, and how we treat one another. CoreCivic wants to open the detention center here in our home, seeking to bypass the very rules and processes that the city put in place to hold businesses like theirs accountable. Why are they not filling out the special permit? They believe they can profit from human pain without that accountability. Today we say clearly, not here, not now, and not ever. We believe that every human being possesses inherent dignity, not because of race or a legal status, but simply because they're human. And we are children of God, brothers and sisters, called to love one another unconditionally. Families fleeing violence and poverty, wouldn't you? Compassion. Signs, as they've spoken, and detention cells. They see opportunity in suffering and profit and pain. But all of us differently. We see our neighbors deserving of protection and we see mothers, fathers, children whose courage in seeking a better life should inspire compassion. Too often, labeling immigrants as criminals or burdens to our society, to the economic programs. This false rhetoric fosters fear, division, and resentment, putting us further away from that compassion and unity that God has. God doesn't call us to hate or judge because of borders or skin color or circumstances. Instead, God calls us to open our hearts to welcome one another with love. So, to commit CoreCivic's detention center is to accept a injustice. It is become implicit in a system from breaking families' voices and our collective consciousness. Such actions diminish not only those detained, but all of us as well. We have a responsibility to stand together, to speak for those whose voices are silenced, to advocate fiercely for justice, fairness, and compassion. We demand accountability from corporations like CoreCivic, which prioritize profits over people. We must continue to remind our city leaders of their moral and civil obligations to protect all who reside within our community and to remind our neighbors what it means to love one another. This isn't about politics, Republicans and Democrats. This is about human rights, solidarity, and our shared commitment to justice. We reject the idea that people are commodities, that suffering can be monetized, and that dignity can be ignored. So today we send a clear message. Our community will not be bought with the money they're offering. Our compassion will not be silenced, and our humanity will not be compromised. Together we hold the line against oppression, we stand firmly with the marginalized, and demand justice for every single person. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jean Ann, and thank you to the Sisters of Charity who've been foundational to this movement. Their support has been absolutely instrumental. Yeah, big round of applause. I didn't expect to be applauding Catholics, but yeah, honestly. We do have water, donuts, and chips here. If you need anything, just come grab a snack. It's early. Make sure you're hydrating. Next, we're going to hear from Heru Amin Ra, a previous CoreCivic detainee. Heru is here speaking with Decarcerate KC. You want to talk more on that?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Heru Amin Ra. I'm an organizer with Decarcerate KC, also a member of Freedom Community Center STL, and a creator and host of We Keep Us Safe, the movement, panel discussions, and podcasts. And I'm not just an abolitionist. I'm not just an organizer. I'm a survivor of Leavenworth Penitentiary. I was caged in that facility from December 2014 to August 2017. So when I speak on what's happening today, when I speak on CoreCivic's attempt to reopen Leavenworth, to detain immigrants for ICE, I speak from lived experiences. I speak from the truth and I speak from pain. Let me tell you what this place was really like. When I arrived in 2014, they already had a unit closed due to the mold. And not just a little mold, not just a little patch on the wall, extremely harmless conditions. And while I was there, another unit was closed. And the mold got so bad that they had to move everyone out of it and move them into the remaining units that everybody else was housed in. And so the idea of fixing it was to power wash it and paint over it. And after that, moved us back in there. So that was their solution. And just like that, they moved the folks back in there. And that was their ideal care. That was their ideal safety. And we were there breathing that air in every single day. A few years after I got out, the place was closed down because of the extreme conditions. So let me ask you this. If it wasn't safe for us back then, what makes it safe for people to be detained there today? Why is it okay to reopen this death trap just to cage another population? This time, people fleeing violence, people searching for safety, people trying to survive. And let's be real, this ain't about safety, this ain't about care, this ain't about justice. It's about money. CoreCivic is a private prison company, a corporation, a business. Every single cell they fill is a check to cash. Every single immigrant they detain becomes part of their profit margin. That's it. ICE and CoreCivic don't care about people, they care about quotas. They care about contracts, they care about control. But I'm here to say we are not property. We are not bodies to be bought and sold like they did our ancestors. And we would not let Leavenworth be used to warehouse our people again. As a black man who lived through this system, I know what it means to be caged. I know what it means to be treated like, you're disposable. And I refuse to be silent while this country turns around and does the same thing to our immigrant brothers and sisters. Abolition means all of us are free. No, abolition means none of us are free until all of us are free. Not just some. It means fighting for the people crossing the borders, just like we fight for the people behind borders. Because none of us are free until all of us are free. So, here's the bottom line. We demand that this place remain shut down for good. No ICE contracts, no CoreCivic partnerships, No more cages. We demand investment in care, not punishment. We demand investment in housing, not holding cells. And we demand investment in healing and not harm. The truth, this country keeps building cages and calling it justice. But we're building something different here today. We're building power. We're building peace. And we will not let this prison reopen in silence. Shut it down and keep it down for good. Thank you.
Haru mentioned that when mold grows in CoreCivic facilities, they pressure wash it, paint over it, and move people back in. That means the mold's still there. People are still going to get sick. They're just not going to get caught. And that really sums up CoreCivic's core ethos. Corners can always be cut to make a quick buck, and it doesn't matter what person you hurt when you cut that corner. Next, we've got another victim of CoreCivic, Marcia Levering, a previous employee of CoreCivic.
Good morning. I am a former staff member of CoreCivic. I worked there in 2020, 2021 for just a mere 10 months. My life has forever changed. As you can see, I'm not who I was before the incident. I'm now on disability and trying to make it just like the rest of you, and it's just, I don't want to say it's a meager existence, but that's about what I'm doing right now, and I'm still trying to raise the last of my 4 children. I still have 2 left in the home, but I'm going to read to you what I was going to present to the judge. I guess I was under the impression I was going to speak directly to the judge, so here goes. Again, my name is Marcia, and I'm here as a former employee, not a former citizen of Leavenworth, but a survivor of one of the many violent incidents that occurred inside of the CoreCivic facility here in our facility. In February 2021, while I was employed there, I was brutally attacked by an inmate and stabbed 4 times. Once on my right arm, resulting with a large rod and 10 pins, twice in my abdomen, once in my right ear, which left me with permanent facial paralysis. I lost 24 inches of my colon, my gallbladder, resulting in the doctors cutting me open from breast bone to belly button, not once, but twice. I spent 2 months recovering in the hospital and have endured approximately 16 surgeries so far. I still live with permanent internal trauma, head trauma, and disabilities. Another staff member was also with me that day, and that day she was not supposed to be on the floor because she was not OC certified to have protection. They were so incredibly understaffed. She had her over there, they had her over there with 1, not the experience, 2, another officer for her to, work with, for at least, I think, is it 3 to 5 shifts? And another new staff on the opposite side wall of her, and he was probably 2 months new. So there should have been 7 employees over there, and there were 2. They were also minus a bubble officer, and you may have seen in the movies the bubble officers are behind the glass. They can watch both sides to see what's going on. So that day when I was attacked, there should have been 7. There were 2. I was doing my 2 weeks of training as a new case counselor, and I was in there intermittently, not even every day, but just to go and check on my office, see if there's anything I needed to do, give reports to other inmates that were in segregation. But that day when I was attacked, she was attacked as well, and she also did not have protection. She should not have been there. She should have not been on the floor, and her life is also forever changed. I didn't get a hold of her quickly enough to let her know this was happening, so that's on me, and I do apologize. Again, as I said, I still live with permanent internal trauma, head trauma, and disabilities. Another staff member I mentioned was injured along with me, and the following year, Officer Hirschberger, I think he's up here in the picture, he was killed the following July. Then 3 inmates right after me. Mine was February. It could have been April, May. 3 inmates were in separate different incidents were murdered by other inmates. These are not just statistics. These are lives, and I'm one of them. The Leavenworth facility where this occurred was plagued by dangerous understaffing, lack of medical oversight, and systemic abuse, all of which were cited in a formal letter sent by the ACLU chapters of Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri to President Biden in late 2021, and shortly after, the facility was shut down in December 2021. Now, as you guys know, CoreCivic is seeking to reopen their facility without obtaining a special use permit, which the city of Leavenworth rightfully requires. The company claims that because it previously operated there, that they should be grandfather claused in, and it should be exempt from current zoning laws and oversight. And the key word here is oversight. But this permit is not a formality. It is the city's legal mechanism to monitor and regulate what happens behind those walls, to ensure staff are protected, inmates are treated humanely, and the community is not kept in the dark about what happens inside, like they've had for the past 30 years. Without the special use permit, CoreCivic can operate without any local accountability, just as before, and the results back then, as you guys have seen through the course of the past few years, were catastrophic. I'm living proof of what happens when this company is allowed to function without oversight. The refusal to comply with the permit process and pay the associated $75,000 fee is really a drop in the bucket to them. So it's not about the money, it's about the oversight. It's about avoiding transparency, avoiding public scrutiny, and continuing to place people, staff, and inmates alike in danger. Since losing my workers' compensation in June, I now survive on a meager $814 a month in disability benefits. My life has changed forever, and it is deeply painful to see CoreCivic to reopen this facility under the same circumstances that caused so much harm to me and to many others. I respectfully urge all of us, as you're already doing, we need to go, present ourselves to the judge, and hopefully, he will rescind or ensure that they pay for the special use permit. I don't know what to make of this. I mean, I think this is just another step. If he enforces that, there's going to be another step in this process, and we deserve better. We deserve safety. We deserve oversight, and we all deserve justice. And CoreCivic needs to go away, and they have the audacity to call us outsiders. Thank you.
To Marcia's point on the special use permit, we're going in here today because Judge Bryan is going to be ruling on 2 motions to dismiss by CoreCivic and a motion to stay his temporary injunction. And Ms. Marcia is correct. When we win this court case, there is a next fight. It's not just going to be CoreCivic getting a special use permit and doing it anyway, though. The special use permit is a democratic process. The city commissioners vote. As Haru mentioned earlier, we're here to build power because we're here to get ready for that fight. Now, Bill, would you like to come say a few words? This is Bill Rogers, another former CoreCivic employee and an outspoken advocate against CoreCivic.
So, I didn't write a speech. I'm not too good at speaking, but I do want to say something that Miss Levering, she herself a little short. Miss Levering is what we call an hero. She didn't tell you that she spent 7 years in the United States Army. She didn't tell you that she was deployed to Iraq. She didn't tell you that that picture up here of her is when she laid in ICU and the CoreCivic would come into her ICU room and have her sign a paper, ultimately which led to her getting $0 on a settlement. I just want to mention that. I also want to say that y'all need to stop by this board. The board on my left is all factual. Emails to the warden about the drugs, a letter from the company threatening legal action to me for speaking out, police reports, a number of police reports. I also want to show you guys this. This is 5 years of police reports from CoreCivic. And this is a drop in the bucket to what really happened because they didn't report it. When I was stabbed, it's not in here. When I got my head split open, the picture's on the board, they didn't report it to outside sources. So they don't want the permit because they don't want the oversight. I also want to say, as I looked into this with CoreCivic, this is just not a Leavenworth problem. This is a for-profit CoreCivic problem. CoreCivic is housed, their corporate is in Tennessee. They have 4 facilities in Tennessee that they house state inmates in. There's not other state facilities in the state. These are the death records for the last 5 years of the state of Tennessee. I have every name, the date of death, the age, and the cause of death for every inmate in the state for the last 5 years. If you're sent to CoreCivic's Trousdale, you're twice as likely to die in that facility. Over twice as likely to most of them. They don't have max, which you would think typically the max would be the most dangerous. But if you look at their 4 prisons over a 5-year total and look at the percentage of deaths and compare it to the others, I'm just asking you to compare it. But these are all facts, and I ask you to stop by the boards. If you got any questions, I'd be more than happy to point it out. I can tell you that Dylan Reed died on Thanksgiving Day 2018. I responded to that call, and CoreCivic dropped the ball. They were negligent on his care that day. Dylan Reed died. Yeah, Dylan Reed had somewhat to do with it, but Dylan Reed died because of direct CoreCivic negligence. There's also a police report up here where a young man hung himself in the shower, and he hung there for an hour and 10 minutes and had an officer walk by 10 to 12 times and not noticing as he hung there. He hung for an hour and 10 minutes. There's required checks, and they weren't done. Now, we can say that was the officer being negligent, but what I'll tell you is this CoreCivic being negligent because he was probably in that facility, in that area by himself. It was a 3-man post. He was probably overworked, probably new, and so we can't put all the blame on him. Also, I think it's interesting, the CoreCivic has in Tennessee, I think it was 2023, they had a 188% turnover rate in that facility. So when they talk about the good paying jobs, yeah, I gotta say, CoreCivic ain't paying bad, but it's a shithole to work in. Just a shithole. So keep that in mind. Thank you. And also, I want to say this. This movement is moving because of you guys. It's moving because of Esme with ACLU, Sam with AIR, the Sisters of Leavenworth, and all of you. Every day that that place stays closed is one more day we don't have anybody illegally housed there. So keep the movement going. Thank you for coming out, and you guys are the ones that are making the difference. Thank you.
It's really easy to talk about numbers, but it is important to realize that this is not an academic problem. Dylan Reed died in the Leavenworth facility because CoreCivic is systemically negligent to save money. It's what they have been doing the entire time they've existed. It's what they're going to continue to do, and it's personal. He had a name. He was a person. They killed him through negligence. Personal to remember, the actual victims of this predatory carceral behavior. I've got Ann Prelker. She's an immigration lawyer who'd like to talk.
Good morning. As he said, my name is Ann Perelker. I've been practicing immigration for a number of years now. I had a solo practice. And actually, my husband is a first-generation immigrant, so this is kind of personal to me as well for that. While immigration is what piqued my interest into this, I am now a proponent against profit prisons. So thank you for bringing me in on that. I'm happy to learn about it and see what I can do to stop that. I did prepare a little speech, and I'm going to read it. But before I do that, I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Rogers said. What happened at CoreCivic to the people there is the responsibility of that company and not the men and women who are just working to try to feed their families. So let's make sure our anger and rage is towards the right people. They're trying to save a buck. Other people are just trying to feed their families. So let's be mad at the right people. And now I'm going to read what I wrote for today, and I hope it speaks to some of you. First, it was Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Paine. Then Carnegie, Tesla, and Pulitzer. Albert Einstein, Madeleine Albright, Sergey Brin, and Kansas's own James Naismith. Who knows him? Inventor of basketball and started the KU basketball program. Dave Matthews and Drake, Van Halen, and Louis Joseph Chevrolet. Guess who that is? Chevrolet. The list of famous immigrants to the United States goes on and on. A lady named Mary Piper once said, "People come here penniless, but not cultureless. They bring us gifts. We can synthesize the best of our traditions with the best of theirs. We can teach and learn from each other to produce a better America." And isn't this what we've been doing since the beginning of America? Isn't this the true American project, the melting pot that we see here today? Our diversity is our strength. In 2024 alone, immigrants contributed $2.1 trillion to the economic output of the United States. Nearly 45% of firms as of 2020 on the Fortune 500 list were founded by immigrants or their children. Between 1995 and 2005, 52% of all new Silicon Valley companies were founded by immigrants. That's huge. That keeps us competitive in the world. Alexander Graham Bell. Irving Berlin, for those of you who are younger, he wrote White Christmas and God Bless America. That's the story since America's founding. And that story is the true promise of America. But we have another story weaving in nowadays, and that's a really dark story. It's a story of men in black masks snatching our people off the street. It's a politics of cynicism that is replacing the story of America as one of hope, of what Ronald Reagan called the shining city on the hill, with a story of division. They claim, they've told us, we'll just come legally. It's all about legality. We don't have a problem with legal immigration. We're only focused on violent criminals. And let's be real, who here, it does not support getting violent criminals off our streets? Nobody. So there's no argument there. But that's not what's really happening. They're destroying the diversity in the heart of America. It's intimidation, it's fear, it's children torn from the arms of their mothers. It's grandparents taken from their families' homes. Not all of them. It's fathers whose windows are smashed on the way to school, who are in the legal process of getting, and children are taken away. Their fathers are dragged away while their children are on their way to school. And I get it, not everyone can understand because they're not exposed to it, they've not seen it. So we're going to forgive and we're going to move forward regardless of what other people want to say and do. And we're going to come back, please. Thank you. People will come around. We don't have to force people around, okay? We're going to do what we're going to do, and they'll come. All right, I'm going to continue. This is not what America is. This is not who we are. Upstanding, contributing members of our society, U.S. citizens who don't look like me, are afraid to leave their homes. Do you know how I know? Because they have told me. They have called me to have me on standby just in case. I don't want that. I don't want my friends sending me all of their paperwork just in case. They might be picked up unjustly and accused of not belonging here. And if you haven't heard what happened earlier this week in Lenexa, last night I listened to Councilwoman Arroyo describe how she was asked for her papers in Lenexa because some online person decided she was not a citizen. She'd been serving in that seat since 2021 and no one ever questioned it. To hold public office, you have to be a U.S. citizen. No one else on that panel has been questioned about their citizenship. So we can't pretend that this is not what it is. It's not about taking violent criminals off our streets. They're actively creating undocumented people. They're taking away protected status. They have opened naturalization cases to try to denats people. Now, while that's always been an option, it's usually saved for really horrible things. Like maybe you were a member of the Nazi Party and you didn't tell them, you should be denaturalized. But if you got a traffic ticket, something else ridiculous, that's not a reason to deport somebody. So Leavenworth, you're here, you're standing up, you're setting the example for the rest of the country today. As I understand it, y'all are the only ones that have been able to prevent this from happening in your city. Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. You said no alligator Alcatraz copycats in our town. We're not doing it. We will not sit by and allow this facility that is already known for its historic mismanagement that led to human rights violations and the attack on innocent employees and the death of inmates. We won't allow it. The people have spoken, the people of Leavenworth have spoken, the people of Kansas have spoken, and I support the people. This is America, this right here. What each one of you are doing. Citizens standing up for what's right. To make their communities and their country a better place. And I'm proud to be here with you. I'm proud to join you in this fight. And together we are going to restore the promise of America. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
All right, we're getting close to the start of the hearing, so at this time, anyone who is elderly or disabled, we'd ask that you start filtering in so we can make sure we get you seats. We've got a couple more speakers. My buddy Mitch has a couple words, and then we got Eric Price with the Leavenworth Games coming up after, and then we'll be wrapping up.
Hello, everyone. My name's Mitch. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Socialism being the answer to capitalism, which is the reason we have for-profit prisons. Point out here too, there's a few pictures. ICE and immigration. I think I'm going to draw a bigger picture here and then kind of zone in on Leavenworth. So the first thing I want to say is people don't move across the world for no reason. People do not leave their homes, crawl under barbed wire, get treated like second-class citizens for no reason. And that reason is empire and imperialism. This country, as of this week, you can go look it up. There's a study from the and out of the UK. It says that U.S. sanctions have caused 500,000 deaths every year since 1970. That is 28 to 30 million people around the world. And that's a big reason why people move here, is because this country, with its 900 military bases, its control of the economic system, attacks operation, war, and their homes are destroyed. They don't come here because of opportunity. That doesn't even exist for a lot of the people who live here. Most people are paycheck to paycheck these days. What kind of opportunity is that? In fact, that opportunity was only created by destroying indigenous people. So I think we gotta look at the bigger picture of our history and say we want something different, want something better. There's no reason why people should be seen as a threat to somebody else. You know, we have enough resources. This is the richest country in the world. We could give everybody a education, all these things, actual freedom. That's what real freedom is. It's not being able to post online. Freedom, you know. Out that, like, how do we it means not having 900 military bases. It means all those resources back home to help. You know, Leavenworth is underinvested in. I'm coming from Kansas City. We don't barely have working bus routes now in the richest country in the world. It's just, we are a laughingstock of the world in that way, and we should be fighting for those kind of improvements, those root cause improvements. And to me, that answer is socialism. You know, I see what this country is allowing and abetting and funding and planning when they destroy Palestine. 2 million people starving to death, bombed every day. And then what are they doing on the domestic front? Well, they just gave ICE $160 billion. That's larger than the Russian military expenditure of 1 year. It's as much as the North Korean military budget. So these are our enemies that we say we need to destroy, and they are spending less money on war than this country, which now spends over $1 trillion on war. What I'm saying ultimately is that our enemies are actually right here at home. They're the ones that are locking up our neighbors. They're the ones who are keeping you from getting education. They're giving you all these car loans and all these other things to just bury you in debt, so you can't sit out here and fight when your neighbors are getting caged. So ultimately what I'm saying is, like, we need a system, we need a new system, one that puts people first before profit and takes care of the planet and everybody's needs. It's really quite simple, but I think it's important to actually center that in the fight, because we're never going to get rid of these we're never going to like actually solve these problems if we just use kind of surface level solutions. And one of these surface level solutions is to distract you by saying that your neighbor is actually the enemy. That's a distraction. They're reaching into your pocket while they're doing that and grabbing everything you have. So just remember, it's the capitalists, those are the enemies. Washington, they got to go. We need a new system. And thank you for fighting, because I actually do think that Leavenworth is putting its foot down in a way that will inspire others. It is the original term for a meme, if anyone knows what it is. It's a format that spreads, and it became an internet thing. But when we call something memetic, we mean that it kind of took off in its own way. And I, student encampments for Palestine. Spontaneous reaction to what was happening in Palestine, and all these encampments popped up based on one started at one university, and then all the universities pop off. And I think Leavenworth can actually be that same thing for stopping ICE. Like, this little small Kansas town could galvanize the whole country if we win this fight. Everyone around the country now has a template to follow. They have something to draw from, and momentum can shift the other. We're seeing a lot of kind of losses, I guess, or we're really having a hard time pushing back against ICE because they have the budget of an occupying army. But when this town wins, and it will, that will inspire others to do the same. So that's how important I think Leavenworth is. It might seem, we're in small Kansas, it might not seem that important, but it's super important. So thank you for your time.
Mitch had a note that I want to sort of magnify there about how migrants are being used as a scapegoat to distract you while you're robbed. This is what empire does when it's in decline. When it can no longer project power over the world at large, it turns inwards and finds somewhere to exercise power safely within its own borders against the most vulnerable population it can, so that the men at top can still feel big and strong without risking anything. That's what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. They want to rob you, and they don't want to risk losing an actual war, so they need somebody to distract you, and they've chosen migrants. Now we've got Eric Price with the Leavenworth Dims, who's going to have one last bit for us, and then Mike's going to close with a word on courtroom etiquette. We do want to show some respect to Judge Bryant, so we're going to go over how to do that.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Kind of hard to follow all of our speakers that came before, especially as a party guy, but I'll do my best. So as Rick said, I'm Eric Price. I'm the chair of the Leavenworth Democratic Party, a 30-year Army vet. I've been living in Leavenworth as my chosen home for the last 20 years. Although I'm here as a party guy, this is not about politics. As Sister Jean Ann said, this is about morality and about law and about human rights and human dignity. And I think it's very important that we continue to remember that. We're gathered because something is happening in our community that none of us, Republican, Democrat, Independent, should stand for. A massive corporation hundreds of miles away is trying to reopen a for-profit prison here But more than that, they are trying to cut corners, skirt local laws, and avoid public accountability. After a long record of operations across the country that could best be described as inhumane. So let me be clear, it's not about locking up violent criminals. It has been made abundantly clear that it's aimed at detaining migrants, the people who pick our crops, build our homes, serve our food, assist families with care, and all in furtherance of an immigration policy that itself is fraught with moral questions. This is not justice, it is exploitation. If you've followed what's going on in the situation here with CoreCivic, then you know there are a multitude of issues that have brought citizens from across the political spectrum to oppose CoreCivic's resumption of operations at the facility here in Leavenworth. And yet their supporters continue to discuss this issue in purely political terms, accusing those of us who are standing up for our community of supporting open borders or opposing new jobs and tax revenues and economic development, or simply suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. But let's be honest, we can disagree about immigration policy writ large and still agree on two essential things. CoreCivic must follow the law, and we ought to be a better community than one that profits from human suffering. So first, to the law. Just as we stand outside of the court building here today, our local government has come to a singular conclusion, and that means all of the political folks, that CoreCivic has to follow the law like every other business that wants to be in this community. Imagine what would happen if we allowed them to not follow the law. What happens with the next business? What happens with the businesses that have already been denied permits that then want to sue because they weren't allowed to just do what they want rather than following the law? You would think that the law and order folks would support this, but they don't. Perhaps such strong opposition is because they don't want CoreCivic to be held accountable to the city for its actions. Public hearings and debate, in order for them to get a permit approved once it was filed, would only expose CoreCivic for what it is, a money-making enterprise that seeks to extract maximum profit from our community while providing very little back to all of us. Will there be more jobs and higher wages? Or will it be mostly shuffling around the people who already work in the prison industry in our community, jobs that we can't currently fill right now with the prison facilities that we have, thus putting the safety of inmates and workers at risk in every facility if we dilute those numbers even further? The corporation isn't coming here to protect us. ICE isn't coming here to protect us. They're coming here to profit off of us. They see our community not as a home, but as a business opportunity. And when we allow outside corporations to turn our neighbors, whether they're citizens or not, into revenue streams, something fundamental we are. And again, about those other costs, I was raised to believe that incarceration was about punishment, yes, but more about rehabilitation. But what care does a for-profit prison have in helping its inmates return to society as better people, either here in the States or in the case of immigrants when they're deported back to wherever they came from? Never mind how little a faceless corporation will care about the safety and security of its workers in this community, a fact proven by their long, horrible record. So I oppose CoreCivic operating here at all. Now, the Democratic Party is probably not as firm on that stance as I am. We're a big tent, just like there's a lot of people standing out here for a lot of different reasons. But it isn't about being soft on crime. It isn't about ignoring immigration law. It's about standing up to a corporation that wants to take advantage of our town, of our values, of our people to line their own pockets. To maximize profit in punishment while minimizing the safety and well-being of its workers and inmates. In that system, it won't just be the workers and the inmates who will be victims. It will be all of us. Leavenworth will be the victim of that. But while I fundamentally oppose CoreCivic, at a minimum, our government and our community must hold CoreCivic accountable, and to the same standards and the same laws that every business currently operates under, or who seeks business also has to follow. So I thank all of you for coming out today and standing with me for whatever reason you're opposed to CoreCivic. I thank you for standing with your neighbors here in Leavenworth, regardless of party, and for standing against a for-profit prison that serves no one but its own bottom line. Thank you for standing against a corporation and its supporters that seek to break the law, ironically, all in the name of supposedly upholding the law. Let's send a clear message. We will not let CoreCivic use our town as seed ground for greed without accountability. We will not allow them to profit off dividing families and disrupting our community. And we will not be silent while our laws are twisted in the shadows to benefit outsiders who do not live here, who do not care about us, and who will leave all of us worse off than before. This is about dignity, it's about fairness, it's about who we are when we are at our best. A community that looks out for one another and doesn't sell each other out for profit. Together, we can stop this. Together, we can keep this town ours. We can protect the people who live here, whether they are citizens or not. And we can continue to make this world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate your words. And Eric was also our sound guy today, so the fact that if you can hear us, that we're not through a poorly held megaphone. Thanks, Eric. And thank you all for making a big show. I think we're one of the biggest protest movements that Leavenworth has ever seen. There was a lot of wisdom in a previous commenter who talked about this can be a model for other communities who are battling ICE detention facilities. We are the only local government that's been able to stop one of these things, and it's due to the tireless efforts of the activist community that have pushed our city commission to make sure that they stay the course. Legal work is not free. It's not without cost to the political people who make those decisions, and we owe them a lot of respect for their courage to stand up, and that includes conservatives and liberals. So thank them for their hard work. And we're here in support of their efforts. We're winning in the courtroom, but we have to be mindful of courtroom protocols and how we conduct ourselves in the courtroom. At the last hearing, the CoreCivic attorney, who is very skilled at playing to hostile audiences, she was talking about how CoreCivic had a right to due process. And I was not the only one who laughed out loud that CoreCivic could make a due process argument in this very case when the whole ICE mass deportation is done outside of due process, outside of the law. And I laughed because it was funny, and I was not the only one. And she used that laughter to stop, because lawyers can't repeat themselves unless they're interrupted. And our laughter was an interruption. So she made the same point again, and she did it more forcefully, and more of us laughed, and also some people added some hissing. And then she looked up like, oh God, how do I suffer? And the judge took notice of her overreaction and threatened to clear the courtroom. He got his hackles up a little bit. And this is a judge who is unquestionably ruled in our favor again and again, and we want to continue to do so. So we want to be strategic. Now, it might come a time where we might feel a need that we need to disrupt some certain norms, some certain policies for a greater cause of justice, but that is not today. This is why we had this rally, to give people a chance to make bold statements, to be loud if we wanted to be loud. And now it's time for those who are going to join us in the courtroom. We can't have signs. You can bring your phone, but you can't look at it. And he's going to take a hard stance, and it's not going to help our cause if we bring the disruption into the courtroom. So if you're coming today and you're just coming for the rally, thank you, and I'm so glad that all of you came out with all of our different beliefs and all of our different backgrounds. We are all united in one voice, and in Leavenworth that includes conservatives and moderates and liberals and yes, even leftists. We all stand united in that private prisons are a bad idea. CoreCivic is a bad actor in particular. Mass deportation is done outside of the law and outside of our dignity and respect as citizens of the United States of America. We're all in agreement on this. We want to hold this coalition together. We want to stay laser focused on those issues of justice, and we want to bring a sense of decorum and civility when we enter the courtroom. Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone who made this happen. Can we give a round of applause for our local activists? They did all the heavy lifting that many of us have already moved on to the courtroom, but thank them, thank the city commission, even the judge, and the city was great about a permit. And I can tell you, it's not that hard to file for a permit. This one costs $10. We're glad to do it. So appreciate y'all keeping us in compliance. We don't want to look like hypocrites when we demand CoreCivic apply for a permit, and then if that is granted, then we will hold them accountable to follow the stipulations that are going to protect folks and ensure the smooth and safe operation for facility residents, facility staff, and the community. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all. Well done. Well done. There's snacks and water. You can bring those in the courtroom. But if folks can help Eric with stuff, I'm going to slide into the...
Okay, everyone. This is the Justice Center here in Leavenworth, Kansas, where a hearing for a permit concerning the opening of the CoreCivic Detention Center here in town is about to start. We are not going to take the camera into the courtroom. Obviously, as you just heard from the last speaker, there is certain... there is certain decorum, which obviously means that bringing a live camera into that hearing is not going to be allowed. But I am going to try to speak with some of the with a person who actually spoke earlier, who was an employee of CoreCivic, and see what he has to say, and then probably wrap it up from here, and maybe even do something a little bit different towards the end, and maybe a follow-up as I get home and follow on the hearing updates, as I'm sure they're going to come out probably later this afternoon. But give me 1 second here, and let me grab the gentleman that spoke earlier. I believe his name was Bill, and I kind of want to get his take, especially as a former employee of CoreCivic. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill you guys in again on what's happening here, and then I'm going to go ask some questions. So this was the rally against the CoreCivic facility that's about to open here in Leavenworth, and it seems like this specific hearing is over a permitting issue that the people are using to delay the opening of the facility. The facility also recently got an ICE contract to extend, essentially, to start allowing for deportation detainees pre-detention here in Leavenworth, Kansas. And people had a lot of signs and spoke about how how a lot of people in the crowd were against that specifically, obviously, and a lot of abolitionists here as well, speaking on the privatization of the carceral system here in America. But right now, this hearing is probably going to go on for a few hours, I'm assuming, and any updates I'm going to try to keep up and follow up. But there was a gentleman here earlier that spoke who was an employee, and he had a lot of data and photos of incidents that happened while he was employed there to him and his coworkers. And right now he's talking to some other protesters and explaining his experience, but I'm going to get a chance to talk to him here in a moment. So thanks everyone for joining me. You guys can also catch more info on our Facebook page as well. You can find us on Threads for photos of this event, and obviously follow on our YouTube channel for more coverage like this from the Kansas City area currently. But let's flip the camera back around and kind of give it a moment. I also want to mention that some of the previous speakers included a detainee who spoke about the importance of abolition. A representative for the ACLU here in Kansas also referenced Bell Hooks, who is an abolitionist, which I recommend doing some reading if you haven't had a chance to do background on that. Abolition can be a word that scares people. It doesn't always mean complete lawlessness or anything like that. It just means finding ways to divert resources to places that are essentially life-affirming, like housing, food resources, instead of incarcerating people for small crimes. Yeah, actually, I'm going to move the camera so I can get the signs in as well. And I know you spoke earlier, obviously, about being an employee of the facilities. Let's see if I can get you to move. Perfect. That should work pretty well. And I'm just going to hand you the mic if you want to introduce yourself. But again, you spoke earlier as an employee here, and obviously you've had some lived experience with what's going on behind the walls of the buildings. So if you just kind of want to catch us up, because I know you want to attend the hearing.
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is William Rogers. I was an officer inside CoreCivic for 4.5 years. When I worked in there, this is all CoreCivic Leavenworth based facts. These aren't made up. These are, you have an email from unit team describing the dangers of drugs right here. You have an email, or I'm sorry, a letter from CoreCivic corporate threatening legal action against me for some of the things that I was speaking about. This is from the Department of Justice report 2017. If you haven't read that, you need to look into that. This is a picture of me the day I got 14 staples in my head. I was assaulted by an inmate. We were short-staffed. A friend of mine beaten, had to have surgery. But Miss Levering here is a former officer, unit team, served in the United States Army for 7 years, deployed to Iraq in this picture. This is her in intensive care. She was beaten, stabbed to near death. This is what she looked like when CoreCivic came into her room and thought the most important thing at that time was to have her sign a piece of paper, so that basically that ultimately led to her not being able to get a settlement. She's had 16 surgeries to date. CoreCivic has left her at poverty level, and that's what they think of the American veterans in this country. I also have this inmate here who died, 29-year-old Dylan Reed. I did CPR on him. He should have never died. That was negligence through the facility. But I think what's interesting is CoreCivic didn't report this death to the authorities for 6 days, the proper authorities for 6 days. I don't really know what that was about. Here you have another officer that was stabbed. This officer here, young man, was in what we call RHU SEG. He hung for an hour and 10 minutes in the shower as the officer walked by him 10 to 12 times. 10 to 12 times. This is drugs. Meth was in the facility. These are police reports. Lots of suicides in there. These are right here. What I'm holding is police reports from what's supposed to be police reports from 5 years. I can, yeah, go ahead. You can take that. So when I talk about that, I think what's interesting is I went through that, and I thought, wow, that's a lot of police reports. But as I started to look at the dates of the police reports, and you can notice some of them are prior 2020, but most of them are 2020, 2021. And prior to that, they didn't report much to the outside. And that's part of the reason that CoreCivic doesn't want to do this special use permit, because they know if they do it, there's going to be oversight from the city. They don't want anyone knowing what's going on inside that facility, because I'm going to tell you something. If you or I or Congress knew everything that goes on inside the CoreCivic, they would not be operating. Look at this. This is Tennessee. This is current. These are the last 5 years of every state prison in the state of Tennessee. And when I talk about this, it's every inmate that's died in the state of Tennessee, detainee. These 9 facilities right here are state ran. These are CoreCivic ran. Now they're all the same inmates. You could interchange them. 4 of these are max facilities, which should be the most dangerous, right? But I want you to look at the death rates percentages over here for CoreCivic compared to the others. If you go to this CoreCivic facility, Trousdale Turner, you're twice as likely, over twice as likely for most, but you're at least twice as likely to die in that facility than any other. That's the state of Tennessee. That's the home state of CoreCivic. And if they can't do better in their home state, how are we now going to trust them to open up in Leavenworth? Trousdale's a small town, much like Leavenworth, which CoreCivic's notorious for going into small towns and promising these great jobs. If you look across the country, how they do business, you know, think about it. You go into a small town, and they need jobs, right? Just like Leavenworth, you hear people say we need the jobs. Well, CoreCivic in 2023, Turner had over 150%. Well, they had over 150% turnover rate in that year. Can you imagine that many employees turning over? And yeah, you draw them in at first. This Leavenworth facility, they'll get the jobs, they'll fill them, but people don't. It's such a terrible place to work that people won't stay. They'll leave. I don't care how much you pay a person. If you don't have a good work environment, you're not going to work there. You're not going to keep them. In fact, a guy I have the text message. A guy that worked there over 20 years for CoreCivic, when they closed down, he left. He swore he would never go back, but coincidentally, he just got laid off from his job. He went back to CoreCivic, and in his text to me, he said, I think they want to do better, but CoreCivic's always going to be a shitty company. I mean, that's coming from an employee that's working there now. It's just, you know, there's two qualifications to work at CoreCivic. You got to have 2 things. If you have these 2 things, they're going to hire you. You pass a background check, and if you're breathing. Now, you might laugh, but I'm telling you the truth.
But while they're hiring right now, it seems like a lot of the stuff from what people said gets blamed on understaffing. So, do you think just like you said, the turnaround's a big part of it. I mean, how long do you think people last there? Even if they're hiring constantly, which makes it seem like...
And what happens is, especially when you talk about a town like Leavenworth, let's talk about it. Obviously, people are only going to drive so far for a job, right? And so when you talk about Leavenworth, you hire, you fill it up. you start to turn over, right? And then as you start to turn it over, you start to see Indeed. People read on Indeed and different reviews, right? You start to get terrible reviews. People go, well, I'm not going to work there. And eventually you start to deplete your workforce, so to speak. And then what happens is once you, and this was a problem at Leavenworth, once you become so short-staffed, you can't give the necessary training, ongoing training that we were mandated to have. So you don't get your training, right? And the training, you can't pull them out of there to go train them, right? We can't get our training. So then your OC card lapses, or your firearms. So then the ongoing training doesn't happen. So it's a vicious cycle. And we talk about short staff. You know, CoreCivic wanted to talk about Leavenworth, and I heard them the other day. I heard them say, well, COVID. Everybody wants to blame everything on COVID. But if you go back to the 2017 Department of Justice report, it talks about staffing issues as far back as 2015. And obviously, I don't know if you know about triple bunking. I think that's interesting if you've not read the report. But CoreCivic has a habit for being deceitful, lying. I don't know the word I need to use, but in this Department of Justice report, they were doing what they call triple bunking, which was you can't do that. So they were putting these extra beds in, bolting them to the wall, and housing 3 inmates in a 2-inmate cell, they're tiny enough as it is. And so why do you do that? Well, the more sardines I can stuff in that can, the more money I'm gonna get, right? And so the more money that they got, and then when they got caught in an audit, and it's reflective in the Department of Justice, they literally got caught. And it says in there they were being deceitful. Here is another thing about being deceitful, and this is most recently. CoreCivic sent the city a letter saying we're going to use local contractors for upgrades to the facility, which they should, right? This is a big metropolitan area. We have everything you need here. But then when they had $1.1 million contract, they go to a Texas-based company and give them that contract. There's $1.1 million, and this was sent at the same time. These two were going on at the same time, if that makes sense. So we're lying to you. We're telling you how great we're going to be, and at the same time, we're behind your back doing this, right? Yeah.
Is specific to the new extension to house inmates for ICE, or the contract that they got. Sorry, it's just because I do know that that's. People here kind of look at it as, oh, we do need more. Some people might say they need more prisons, but this is also a facility to house just people detained by ICE.
Okay, and I want to speak to that too. I believe the recent numbers, and don't hold me to these. I don't have them in front of me, and I apologize. I couldn't bring everything. The recent numbers. Well, I know in March there was roughly 48% of the detainees in ICE detention center had never been convicted or charged with a crime, right? And the other day I read the latest numbers. It's at 71%. Since March, we went up over 21 points, 21 percentage points. We're now housing, if I remember right, around 50,000 people in detention centers that have never been convicted or charged with a crime. So we say we need Leavenworth, we need the beds, right? We don't need those beds. Because if we let the people out that had not been charged with a crime and let them go through the due process, we've been doing for years, it free up 50,000 beds for the so-called criminals that they're going to employers and picking up, right? So we don't need, that's 50,000 beds. Look at this, $4.2 million for a month. That's one facility in this country, one facility, over $50 million a year. $50 million. So this comes down to a money issue too when you talk about the taxpayers. Early on when this started, the warden said it was outside resistance, right? That we didn't belong here. Well, you know, I think what a arrogant and uneducated statement, because we do belong here because we pay federal taxes. Every American should be here. If you care about your tax money and you live in America, it affects you. It's not just Leavenworth.
And the one thing I do want to point out is that the numbers that are supposed to be either steady or increasing in arrests or detentions.
They're going to increase, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
these numbers are, 50,000 that you stated is not going to stay the same.
It's going to increase. It's going to terribly increase. And I tell you, I believe this with all my heart that this Leavenworth facility, even if they do open, and these people go work there, what these people better realize is these jobs are short term. Because you and I both know, as administrations change, as Congress changes, it's ever evolving, that as fast as this started, this could end, right? And I believe that's going to happen. That's what I pray for. Because can you imagine 50,000? That's 50,000 families being torn apart and they ain't did anything wrong other than be born on the other side of a line. And as a person, you know, I was taught if a person's hungry, you feed them. If they're unclothed, you clothe them. If they're unhoused, you house them. And I wasn't taught that you ask them for citizenship. I wasn't taught that you say, where was you born? How do you belong, right? If you're hungry, let me help you out. And that's what we need to get back to. That's the very core of what America was built on, is just helping each other. Now we're so damn worried. This literally reminds me, I just read a book about slavery, the end of slavery. And what this reminds me, I was so taken back by it, that this reminds me so much of the end of slavery, right? When I thought, okay, slavery ended, everything, they were free, everything was great, right? No, they started creating different laws that started incarcerating the person of color. And then what they did, they started leasing them out to the mills, the railroads, the farms, and so they were put right back into slave conditions. Sorry, I ramble on, man.
I mean, well, again, people here spoke about abolition itself, and one of the things you learn just kind of from being exposed to it is that policing itself was a method of slave catching that kind of
absolutely
over absolutely people, but it was originally started as that, and that control hasn't changed. In my opinion, and I'm going to get a little opinionated, if it's control over immigrants, if it's control over minorities, if it's control over poor people, that is what part of this is about.
You know, and I hear people so much when I say I'm against this, is because, well, you hate Trump. Well, I'm not necessarily fond of Trump, but for me, it's not a political. It truly ain't a political issue, right? It's not a Republican or Democratic issue. It's a human rights issue. I saw it. I experienced it for 4.5 years. When you watch a guy die because in medical, and he should have been sent out because he was refusing his insulin because he wanted to die. Basically, he wanted suicide, and that was the way he chose. And you stand next to him and wait for the nurse to pronounce him dead so that I can bring him back to life. And we didn't send him out to an outside facility that has psychiatric help and that has better medical. And we watched him die in that cold cell. We got a problem.
Just to point out that there's right now a hunger strike going in
and ICE
going on. So
absolutely.
And I'm assuming that they're not, again, not a lot of human beings are prepared to handle.
No. Anybody, I will guarantee you that facility is not equipped to handle that. In fact, I spoke to a sheriff of a local department here locally that runs a very, very large jail. And I asked him about that, and he said at his facility, after I think it was the 4th day of a hunger strike, they go straight to a KU medical center because they're better equipped to handle everything, what that will bring, right? They don't just leave them laying in there and say, I think we can do it. No, we send them out. That young man, now, he wanted to commit suicide. I understand he wanted to, but we had no psychological mental health for him. Obviously he wanted to commit suicide for a reason. Get him up there where we had some mental health and probably could have swayed he wasn't facing a long prison sentence, right? That's what's kind of weird about it. But get him some mental health and the medical help, the two combinations in one facility. Instead we left him there to die. That's you know why CoreCivic did that? I'll tell you why. I thought about this. I thought, well, it's a money-saving issue. No, it wasn't. They didn't have no staff. It takes 2 officers around the clock to take somebody out. They did not have 2 officers to go up there with him. So they just said, we got to do this. That's my personal opinion. I really thought that one out because it's not a money issue. We just don't have the staff.
Right, and like you said, that a big part of that is the unsafe conditions that people.
Right, people don't want to work in that.
Work there for a year, like you said, I think you said about a year, they face something like this, they get out.
Yeah, why would you, for what they were paying, why would you do that? Why would you do this? This man died stabbed in the back. This guy, he just had months left, right? He was just back on a probation violation or something. This young lady right here, nothing. Yeah, she's an amazing woman, What great strength, right? Miss Levering is truly the face of strength.
I think I'm kind of out of questions, but also thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate this because I appreciate the background info as well, and I'm sure anyone watching or catching up is probably going to want to have this info.
It's very personal for me. I think when Dylan Reed died, like I said, he was 29 years old. He shouldn't have died in there, man. And CoreCivic dropped the ball. You can't help but feel that, right?
Yeah.
You feel it.
Yeah,
like. Don't feel it. If you don't feel it, you probably ain't you. So we're just gonna keep going and keep doing what we do, and the people show up, and we got to get away from this Republican or Democratic issue, and we got to realize this is a human rights issue, and this country was founded on immigrants, and we got to understand that these people that come here, the majority of them, they're not bad people. Think about it. If Mexico was a great country and was far better off than we are here, how many of us would take our families to go? You know what courage it takes for a man to say, I think I'm going to take my wife and kids and pack up with nothing and go thousands of miles for a better life with nothing? What courage! This guy's got. What courage, man! What a great father to do that for his family.
And actually, I'm a naturalized citizen, so
sorry.
Sorry.
I don't care what anybody is. If you're living here, man, I want to be friends with everybody. I'm not trying to be funny by that, right? I'm 60 years old. I've seen a lot of shit, man. I even walked through. If you knew my history, you'd say, man, I was charged with 3 felonies in 2005. But you know why I got out of it? 2 reasons. Why I had money. I bought the best attorney's money could buy, and I'm white. I'm just going to be real with you. And then, not only was I charged with 3 felonies, I was guilty of them. They cleaned up my record enough that I could pass the federal U.S. Marshal's background check to get a job up here in 2015. What do you think of that? So as I walk around and house these inmates, you don't think that I thought about that in the back of my head when I walk by every cell thinking I should probably be living with you? So they were just like me. They're no different, right?
Yep. But the reason I want to mention that is because I, obviously being naturalized, had to go through the right way and the system. And that itself costs $30,000, 7 years of your life on being on the best behavior that you can be. So that's the other, I think, in part, the reason for people not just to bring their families to a better life like my family had a chance to, but to do it in a way that they can afford to not come in with a negative, existence. Yeah, and that was 20 years ago when things were easy.
American citizens could afford $30,000. Plus, we're trying to feed our family or take care of our family. We don't have $30,000. And then trying to be on your best behavior, you got to worry about every little thing, especially with what's going on in this country now. And they say they were going after the criminals, and they're going to jobs and getting people that are just simply working. Come on, we're better than that.
I think so too.
All right, man.
Thank you. Thank you for talking. Thank you for sharing. Yep. Oh. So, obviously this went on for a little bit. I want to thank Bill for sharing a lot of that info with me and allowing me to be able to ask questions of someone who witnessed what went on inside one of the facilities, especially as a correctional officer and someone who's witnessed a lot of this violence firsthand. But right now, everybody's inside. I'm assuming that the hearing is ongoing. So I am actually probably going to wrap it up and pack and head on home. I think that I will probably If I have news of what's happening tonight, I will probably fire up a live stream with a quick update. If anyone wants to join, it'll probably be available on YouTube and the Facebook page. If there are no updates, I will probably follow up with a post within a few days about the hearing. But I want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank everyone for watching. And I wanted to thank everyone who spoke to me and who gave me the time as well. To anyone who's watching still, who wants to follow us either on Facebook or YouTube or Threads under Independent Media Association, feel free. We usually try to cover more events like this. This was Andre Stoika from Leavenworth, Kansas for the CoreCivic hearing rally against the opening of the CoreCivic / ICE detention facility here in Leavenworth, Kansas. Thank you again for watching.